of FEPS, the Foundation for European Progressive Studies. My name is László Andor. I'm the Secretary General of FEPS, and I welcome you at a New Year reception, which is a tradition. FEPS has many good progressive traditions, and this is one of those to welcome our friends, collaborators in a New Year setting, wishing Happy New Year to all. But at the same time, take stock of the past developments and also look ahead to the year that comes. Already third time, we connect the New Year reception with a launch of a very important publication, which is called the Progressive Yearbook. Here in my hand, you can see Progressive Yearbook 2020, Progressive Yearbook 2021. And shortly after our event, you will also be able to download from the FEPS website the Progressive Yearbook 2022. But before we come to the discussion on the book itself, and before discussing the assessment of 21 and the expectations for 22 with the authors of this book, I would like to show you a short video to introduce the topics of the day. My colleague, Elena, is launching the video. Okay, thank you very much. This was a visual shortlist of the events of the past year. And now I would like to ask our president, Maria João Rodrigues, to welcome the participants of this event.
Thank you very much, László. It's a great pleasure to join you, all of you, for this event to launch our Progressive Yearbook. This event to open the year is always a moment of hope. Nevertheless, we need to recognize that, as the video was showing, we are indeed confronted with very hard times. And right now, with a very hard moment. The combination of the fifth wave of pandemics with the risk of kind of war in the eastern border of Europe, and the climate accidents, and everything which is really disturbing our perspective about the future. Nevertheless, we as progressives, we keep this hope on a better future, not because we are downplaying the challenges we are confronted with, but because we can imagine and fight for a better future. And yes, in this very hard moment, we believe that we can turn these pandemics into a new European health union. And we believe that when responding to the recession, we can come with recovery plans which will transform our economies and societies. And we believe that when dealing with climate change, we can invent a greener and a more balanced relationship with the planet. And we also believe that when dealing with the digital transformation, we can counter the risks and we can invent new solutions to improve our living conditions and working conditions. But this only can happen if progressives, they build on their forces, which are now stronger, and they take the lead of the European project. Because we believe that the European project needs to move to a new phase with a stronger cohesion among member states and a basic reliance on European citizens. Yes, this is the moment to move to a new phase where we no longer have the technocratic leadership, we have a political leadership based on a big democratic push. That's why our foundation is so pleased to work with all of you and our family to imagine this new future. We are at your disposal. We have beautiful headquarters, as you can see right now. We have a great team. We have a great work with all our network. And the launch of this Progressive Yearbook today is one beautiful expression of our joint capacity. So a big thank for all of you who make this possible. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Maria. I think you demonstrated that in FEPS, we look back in order to have a sound analysis, but we also connected with a vision. How to go forward, what concrete actions at the European Union level should follow the analysis which we produce together in-house. And this book is also always about the stock taking. It's about selectivity, what was important, what was the essence of the developments, and what should be done, what should be expected. So this creative work is always now routinely and repeatedly performed by the internal team organizing the editorial work. And I would like to highlight the role of my colleagues Anja Škripek and Hedvig Justo, third time together working on the content, developing and maintaining a very good structure. Now, shortly, you will see behind me the front page, the cover page of the new yearbook 2022. But in the meantime, I just want to indeed introduce that we follow with this sequence of progressive yearbooks a section which is about looking back and explaining the main developments also through the chronology of the past year. We identify what was the progress that took place in Europe through several important feature articles. There are so-called big issues of the time, and now we chose a few big issues alongside the themes like the question of the rule of law or the fiscal rules and economic governance, the health union, which the president also mentioned a minute ago, the question of youth, which is supposed to be in the center of European Union action, which designated 22 as the European Year of Youth. We also select a few countries for national focus to deepen kind of country studies to understand the more interesting or more problematic cases. And of course, we also look to the rest of the world to see what consequences some global developments may have on us. And for example, this time around, the fallout from the withdrawal from Afghanistan is one of these issues. And there is a list of predictions, which always closes the volume. Now, this brings me to one important part, which I haven't mentioned deliberately, because this is now what is coming. We always select a Progressive Person of the Year, and there is an interview in the yearbook with the Progressive Person of the Year. Why is this happening? Because we believe that the analysis should not only be about dry facts and numbers and figures. It's also about personal achievements, leading roles, either in politics or in analysis or in the combination of the two, demonstrating a good example which others can learn from, even if copy-pasting good examples is not possible in our world. But we can learn a lot from progressive personalities of the year. And it is my great pleasure to unveil the progressive personality of the year this time around for an achievement which is a very important election, a municipal election which resulted in a gain for progressives from in an office which was previously held by another political party, but also signaling a very important shift towards more center-left gains in politics, which somehow also characterized the last 6 months. In several countries, there were very important changes of government, bringing forward socialists, social democrats. And we believe this trend is something for the continuation we can work on. But the progressive personality of the year this time around is not only a winner of a single election. We remember him recently being a leading voice and a leading force in the European Parliament, as if it was yesterday, working especially on economic affairs for boosting investment in Europe, but also helping with the very unpleasant developments around Brexit. And in the meantime, between two important positions, European Parliament and being a mayor of a major city, he also was a finance minister working on the economic recovery in his country. I think you could have guessed, but if you didn't, I tell you that the progressive person of the year this time around is Roberto Gualtieri. Welcome, Roberto, and congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you, László. Thank you, Maria João. It's really a great honor for me to be named as a progressive person of the year. And it's also a great pleasure for me to see you, to see so many friends with whom we worked very hard and also in the past in the European Parliament and in Europe. So for me, FEPS is a very, very important institution. And so for me, is a double honor and pleasure to be here with you today.
Thank you very much for connecting with us also today. And the readers will be able to read an interview which discusses a lot of substance. But now with the presentation, let me ask you, do you miss Brussels?
I do. I do miss a lot. First of all, of course, I miss a lot David Sassoli. His loss was a great shock, drama for me as a close friend of him, and of course for all the not all Italian progressive, but all the European family, European institution. I miss the work in the European Parliament and also in the ECOFIN and Eurogroup, but I'm also very happy, glad to be able now to try to put on the ground and transform in practice some of the changes we have together contributed to achieve in Europe, because I think that the success we had as a progressive in all the municipal elections in Italy, we won not only Rome, but also Bologna, Naples, Turin, Milan. So it was really a big slam, let's say, was linked to many factors, but also to the fact that we have been seen as people who could at the same time be extremely concrete in a good managerial city, but also to bring the force of a more ambitious change, that is the change of the new development model of social environmental sustainability that now needs to be that to see concretely the European cities at the forefront. And so we don't need just to rebound from the shock of the pandemic. We need to implement deep changes, deep economic, social, environmental changes. And of course, now we have unprecedented resources, European common resources. And I think cities are really at the forefront to experiment and implement such changes.
Thank you very much also for remembering David Sassoli. Obviously, his death was a major loss for the European Union and especially the Progressive family in Brussels. I believe our president also would like to welcome you and congratulate you in person. So if Maria would like to take the floor for a few words, that should be possible.
Absolutely. So this is really my pleasure that we could choose Roberto Gualtieri as our personality of the year. I fully agree that he deserves this completely. I knew Roberto for many, many years in different hats, under different hats, a leading intellectual of the European project. We need also to underline this, a proeminent member of the European Parliament, respected by our family, but also by other political families, I must say, as an outstanding member, chair of the Committee of Economic Affairs for a longer period, and very influential in the ECOFIN discussions in the precise moment where we are dealing with Eurozone crisis, so dramatic moments for Europe, and then building up an alternative for economic governance where Roberto played a critical role. And I could see this myself with my own eyes because we were in the same kind of meetings. So that's why it's not a surprise that when we had a turn in the Italian politics and there was a chance to have progressive ministers in the government, Roberto was chosen as the Minister of Finance. And he was again proving his high capacities, turning to executive power, but with the capacity to bridge between national and European politics. And now what is amazing is now taking a new hat at local level. But what I'd like to underline is Roberto, from my viewpoint, is one of the best examples about what is to be a progressive politician for two reasons. Because he has a progressive mindset, capacity to imagine progressive solutions, but also because he has a unique experience of making political action at all levels, the local, the national, the European, and the international. And I really believe this capacity to make, let's say, a kind of multi-level politics is one of the key recipes for our success as a progressive family, is to bridge between the different levels. So Roberto, many thanks for your inspiring example. And yes, you can count on us. And we go on working together. Thank you very much for all your work.
Thank you very much, Maria. And now I would like to recall that in the second last European Parliament elections, there was actually a big surge of Italian PD members of the European Parliament. It was a big success. And now I would like to give the floor to a friend who became an MEP in 2014 and now is heading the Italian PD delegation. Brando, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I'm happy to see Roberto, to congratulate him also in name of all our delegation of the Partito Democratico, of which he was a prominent member until recently, before becoming, as was recalled, a minister in a very, very important moment for Europe, and then now the mayor of Rome. Our hope is that with the lead of Roberto, Rome can become again a central capital of Europe, a leading city for innovation, for progressive policies. And we are honored that someone with this important work can be the Progressive Person of the Year. Roberto is a great friend, a great comrade, and personally he has been the, we can say, the guide in learning how to do politics and work and to achieve results in the complicated context of the European Parliament. When I arrived, he was already a certainty for us, a reference person, and now I still think we need his European vision and his European experience in this new role that is anyway, as I said, a leading role over the work day to day for the Roman citizens. Rome needs to be, together with the other capitals, the laboratory for experimenting and realizing new progressive policies, the ones that the FEPS has been researching and proposing and dealing with in these years. So we are ready to work again with FEPS, that I thank for this kind invitation to attend this ceremony. Thanks Maria João, thanks László and everyone else, and congratulations to Roberto for this achievement, and I'm sure that we will have still to do a lot of things together. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Brando. You can see there is life after being an MEP. I wonder if Roberto would like to say anything in response to close this round. Roberto?
Yes, thank you, László. Of course, really, I'm honored you are making so many compliments, but thank you. I think it's very important what Maria said about let's say the multi-level governance and how we should all together try to reconnect as much as possible the various dimension of our democratic governance, the local, the national, the European, the international. And indeed, that's the very peculiar path that I've done, the chance brought me from parliament to government to capital, local government. It's very illuminating for me to understand how, if we want to achieve our goals, we need also to improve the capacity to work closely together as progressive at all these levels. The second point I would like to make is I think if on the one hand we should recognize the difficulties and the challenges of the current moment, as Maria João presented, international crisis, climate change, risk in front of results which are important but not maybe crucial of the COP, and of course the wave of the pandemic. This is really incredible succession of variants, and but the other hand, I think we should be fully aware of the importance of the turning point that occurred in 2020, which I personally witnessed, and I think I have to say contributed to achieve, not alone, of course. So it has been a combination of good leadership and good politics, and the socialist family played a crucial role. We have to know, we have to be proud of that, because we were very close to the collapse. We were very close to the collapse of European construction, maybe of European democracy, of a common currency, of all and the combination of the populist threat, nationalist trend, and the pandemic could have been devastating. And so what happened is after a moment of hesitation, I'd say, where minimal solutions were suggested, we have been able to do two things. The first is to decide to act coordinated level with an unprecedented fiscal stimulus, national budget fiscal stimulus, allowed by suspension of fiscal and competition rules, and coordinated monetary policy with 750 billion of extraordinary ECB bond buying program, without which we would have not been able to implement the same level of counter-cyclical stimulus various countries. So Germany would have been able, maybe France in between, Italy not, Portugal, Spain not. So we have been able to do the same, not exact same, but very similar level of counter-cyclical spending, very high level of GDP, and other jurisdictions did the same, but we could do, notwithstanding the imperfection of our construction, with a common currency, a European level, national budget, fiscal rule, competition rule, not a common budget. So we achieved indeed something that was absolutely not obvious, not at all, at a certain point, and this saved us because we preserved jobs. We made possible now the rebound of the economy, which is very strong. Now we have supply side problems. We prevented the financial crisis because without this, we would have now a growth on NPLs, the loop between banks' balance sheet, national balance sheet. We would have seen the same film we saw after the other crisis. And we have to know that what happened with the wrong political response of austerity of the previous crisis produced also not only economic and social disaster, but also political consequences, because it was the base of the surge of right-wing nationalism and populism. So, what I say, that the victory that we had in some elections, including in Italy in January, was also the result of the fact that this time the progressive were able not only to say, as in Italy we did in the past, so we are linked to Europe, we save the link to Europe, but by doing this we have to implement austerity measures, but we have to at the same time preserve the European unity, but also the change of European policies in a more progressive direction, which gave us more political, social space that we saw also in election. So this is the precondition, but it's not sufficient. So we avoided the collapse, and we regained in some countries a clear role, being reconciling, being progressive, social oriented, and European, as not in contradiction, but on the contrary, being condition one of the other, and that's crucial. So we reverted the political agenda and imagination of people that at a certain point saw these things in contradiction and went to the populist as a consequence. But now, of course, we have to build on what we did, because if we now say, okay, it was just a one-off, now we go back to normal business, we don't change the fiscal rules, we don't build on next generation EU to make it permanent, we don't integrate social policies within, we don't understand that maybe our only a single market oriented economic policy was not enough, and we have to integrate a single market with social, with the industrial policy, with budget. So if we don't take the lesson of what happened and transform this in a permanent policy making and change, we really will miss an historic opportunity. And so that's I think what is important also to elaborate conceptually and transform in a clear common political, economic, and social culture about this what actually is happening, of course, because we are all perfectly aware of this opportunity, but also of the risk of missing, of moving forward on the basis of what we achieve, knowing that now we have additional challenges with it requires even more effort, more political innovation than what we achieved in 2020, and we are living on what we achieved in 2020, which is a number of issues relating, but I don't want to enter into all the details of the current challenge, but including the integration of economic industrial policy and international policy. So it's really a big challenge, but I'm happy that we have a place where we can discuss the thing. FEPS is playing a very important role, and I really would like to that the fact that we are discussing at various levels today will be also a sign of a common work that we can do from various places to make the progressive up of the challenge and also of the great results we had, not only Italy, Germany, but in other countries. So again, thank you very much I'm honored of your choice, and I will try to do my best now to prove that you made a good decision, because now I have to prove to be a good mayor. And of course, we are working very, 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 very hard with that. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Roberto. Congratulations again for your performance as an MEP in the national government and then winning Rome. We would like to see you in various other FEPS activities as well, so we count on your further contribution and insight in your rich political experience. And now I would like to move on to a different section and welcome actually all the authors, because the Progressive Yearbook has more than 20 authors. If you don't mind, I'm not going to read the whole list of the authors. You will find it on the website, but there is a short video which my colleague is going to launch in order to greet and thank to the authors. Thank you very much. Indeed, in the next section, I would like to invite into the discussion various authors. And if you don't mind, I would like to start from the back of the book, because the last section is the so-called predictions. So I believe some of our friends who contributed with a little prediction about 2022 are ready to take the microphone and share a few thoughts, just draw attention to their contribution. Obviously, there's no need to reread the entire text, but just highlight some critical ideas would be great. I wonder, for example, if we have in the call Professor Vivian Schmidt. Vivian, are you with us?
Yes, here I am.
Vivian, why don't you take the floor?
Okay, yeah, happy to. And I just want to also congratulate Roberto Gualtieri, whom I met and interviewed when he was head of the commission, the Parliamentary Commission on Economics and Finance. Yeah, congratulations. I followed your many different progressive moments in various aspects of your career with great interest and pleasure to see what an important voice you've been for progressive politics. And so I just wish you all the best in your new role as mayor of Rome. It's wonderful.
Thank you, Vivian. Thank you.
And of course, before that, as Minister of Finance in the Italian government. It is great. So thank you. So very briefly then, looking forward to 2022, I'm cautiously optimistic. After close to 2 years of the COVID-19 doldrums, it seems to me the rate of growth promises to be the best in 50 years. And I think we can really attribute this to the major funding related to the Next Generation EU and the Resilience and Recovery Fund, combined with disengaging the brakes on government investment by suspending the Stability and Growth Pact deficit and debt rules. I think all of this can be credited with the turnaround. But we also need to consider the shift in economic ideas from neoliberal or ordoliberal obsession with deficit and debt to a focus on investment for the green transition, the digital transformation, while addressing social inequality. EU economic governance has also played an important role, having gone from a largely top-down exercise to a more bottom-up one, with national capitals in the driver's seat through the NRRPs. My only concern, which speaks to the caution in my optimism, is that the fund is temporary, the ideational shift might be as well, and the pandemic is not yet over. I think importantly, sort of looking to the future and thinking about what we can do to make the governance better is to consider about how to make the funding initiatives more decentralized and democratic. In other words, because for the moment, it looks like more centralized technocratic fixes. How do we overcome the populist challenge? This needs to involve more bottom-up involvement of the social partners and citizens at the very bottom. In Rome, for example, and elsewhere in municipalities, in regions, et cetera. There needs to be also more enhanced roles for national parliaments in the European Parliament, and arguably consultation via general dialogues, say a great macroeconomic dialogue around the ECB's general monetary targets and bond buying, and industrial strategy dialogue focused on sustainable growth strategies of the Commission and national capitalism as a way to replace the governing by rules and ruling by numbers of the Stability and Growth Pact. It seems to me that the decentralized and democratized procedures could help combat the dangerous politics in which citizens vote for populists out of frustration for their lack of voice and choice. And I think that's the way, on top of the great initiatives already taken, to make a success of 2022.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much, Viviane, for this very concise overview of important developments and expectations. I think also from the predictions chapter, we have with us Dasha Shilovic. Dasha, you wrote about Western Balkans. Would you like to say a few words?
Yes, thank you very much. I'll be much more local since my task has been to write about the Western Balkans. I think still a neuralgic region in Europe. Allow me to thank first FEPS and Maria João and László for giving me this honor, and congratulations to Roberto. I will, in that vein, start with the good news. And the good news is that we are feeling there's more chatter and more cooperation among civil society organizations and actors to counter the negative effects of the financial fallout and the social fallout from the pandemic, but however, particularly to counter the authoritarian, nationalistic, and xenophobic, if you want, trends and tendencies in the region. The other good news is that there seems to be much more chatter and much more cooperation among the political parties that unfortunately on the progressive and social democratic side still continue to be fragmented a lot, but they are trying to forge new consensus and cooperation with the progressive civil society. The issues that are preoccupying them, and that's why I will say something only briefly about the environment where this new trend, both nationally and regionally happens, are the main issues are peace and security, and specific issues like the rule of law, anti-corruption, environment, labor laws, and social policy that has challenged us all in this pandemic, gender equality, and regional cooperation. But a big issue remains the question of EU integration, of the slow process towards that, of the disappointment with the latest I would say, postponement of that process. And the progressive and the social democratic community, the democratic community, is quite frustrated since it hoped that that process will also speed up democratic changes in these countries. And now, what is the environment? The environment is not very conducive. We are seeing a resurgence of nationalism. In some ways, it reminds us of the beginning of the 90s and the potentials for conflict. And I'm sure that all of you have read in the papers those tensions in Bosnia and Herzegovina, for instance, the flares up between Croatia and Serbia, the situation in Montenegro, the unfortunate rise of the right and nationalism in North Macedonia, which was shown in the last elections. And this all is creating quite a lot of angst, especially in view of the fact that at this point, the European Union and the European partners are particularly concerned with peace and security in Europe, with the Ukraine crisis and the discussions with Russia, negotiations with Russia, as well as with that bold, and I would like to compliment all those who've contributed, strategy for sustainable development that the European Union has launched. But that strategy, the Green Deal, and as Roberto was talking, the financial implications of that strategy, does not necessarily hit the region, especially in a situation where the nationalism is on the rise at the expense of the concept of citizenship. And I think we have all contributed to the fact that the new states have become actually national states instead of states of its citizens. The media disinformation confusion is great. We are seeing the resurgence and the collusion on the right with civil society. I will give you the example of anti-abortion and anti-reproductive rights, and also the new anti-vaxxer movements. Again, all this is happening with I would say, a situation where there's some complacency on the part of the European Union regarding those processes and regarding the potential for these countries to join the Union faster. So we do have openings, and hopefully, as a mentor of mine said a long time ago, such authoritarian phenomena last between 10 and 15 years. We may be able to see openings for the change of the situation in Serbia, for instance. The situation in Montenegro will remain fragile with the outgoing President Đukanović after 30 years of his rule. In Croatia, the corruption is enormous. The government and the ruling party is getting away with it. How long that will last, we'll have to see. And of course, the most neuralgic in North Macedonia so far, the Social Democrats have managed to make coalitions and keep the boat rolling, but it's still a fragile political situation. And of course, the most neuralgic is Bosnia and Herzegovina, and we'll see. On Slovenia, yes, we will have to see what the next elections will bring. And there is a lot of regional collusion and cooperation among the right-wing authoritarian, I would call them, rulers. So stay tuned, and the good news is we'll be doing our best. Over to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dasha. Definitely, FEPS will remain focused on the developments on the Western Balkans, and we count on you. The third intervention with a prediction comes on a different topic, which is supposed to be a centerpiece of the policy agenda of the European Commission in this cycle, the so-called Green Deal. And the author is, I think, connecting us from England, I suppose. Mathieu Blondel. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. So first of all, thank you, László. Thank you, FEPS, for allowing me to reflect on what can be expected or at least hoped for in terms of climate policy and politics in the EU going forward into 2022. So I'll try to keep it as short as possible. So in the yearbook, I wrote about the need for, and I guess, especially the possibility of a green whatever it takes moment taking place in 22. And so this whatever it takes moment, as I call it, is of course a reference to the famous speech made by Mario Draghi at the height of the Euro crisis in July 2012. And in that speech, the then president of the ECB and now of course Prime Minister of Italy noted that the ECB and all EU institutions with it actually would do whatever it takes to live up to the existential Euro crisis that was rocking the Eurozone and the EU with it. And it was basically hailed as the defining turnaround in the Euro crisis, of course, as you all know. And since then, of course, many crises have come and gone, and some are still lingering, like COVID-19, geopolitical tensions with Russia, etc. But there is, of course, one crisis that is here and here to stay, and more likely to aggravate, and that's the climate crisis, of course. And this climate crisis would merit a new green, whatever it takes moment, as I argue in the piece. And I guess to a certain extent, it's already been delivered with the EU Green Deal, the climate law, the Fit for 55 package that have all been proposed, and some of them have been agreed on in 2020 and 2021. And in the piece, I elaborate a little bit on that. But my main argument here today is that more is still to be done, since too many restrictions still exist that basically inhibit comprehensive climate action coming into full fruition, actually. And so my argument is that going into 2022, a truly green whatever it takes moment can and should be delivered by, and some of you have already alluded to it, the unequivocal commitment to the permanent reform of the EU's conservative fiscal rules under the Maastricht Treaty. And I think this should be done as happened in 2012, of course. It should be done in view of reassuring citizens, national politicians and governments, and global financial markets and capital markets that the EU is ready to face this existential climate crisis and that it will be dealt with by all means. Because I think that for too long, these conservative fiscal or this conservative fiscal architecture dating back to 1992 actually has left EU member states ill-equipped to face the new realities of the climate crisis. And I mean, this has led to a retreat of the state. It has led to a period of dominance by market-based solutions to climate change, self-regulation, private governance. But where has this led us to? We're still on track for well over 2.4 degrees Celsius warming by the end of this century. And that's, of course, a far cry from what we agreed on in the Paris Agreement. So I think permanent and structural reform of the Maastricht Treaty will give fiscal and financial oxygen to governments and allow them to get more actively involved in climate action. And just to finish off, I think really the stars are aligning. And again, Vivian has already talked about it, so has Roberto. But during the pandemic, for example, we as citizens have all been reminded of the need for a strong government that provides vital public services. A new center-left coalition in Germany has taken office. Millions of people continue to take to the streets to demand climate actions, and it's still now at the heart of the EU's long-term planning. And there is a consensus forming among member states that there is indeed this need to reform or to structurally reform the fiscal rules. If you recall, Mario Draghi and Macron wrote a very interesting op-ed in the Financial Times in December, really arguing and calling on their fellow heads of states and leaders of national governments to actually engage in these reforms. And France now holds the EU presidency, so let's see what happens. And everything looks quite promising. And just like Vivian, I'm cautiously optimistic about it. So that's it. Thank you very much, and look forward to your comments.
Thank you very much. Apparently, everybody is either cautiously optimistic or optimistically cautious. But having mentioned the French presidency, indeed, that connects me with the next topic, since a book doesn't only need authors, it also needs readers. And the next speaker has been reading very important chapters connecting with the rule of law, which is also in the focus of the French presidency agenda in 2022. The previous, but also the new Progressive Yearbook had a chapter on the questions of the rule of law and democracy. And the colleague who has read them both is Professor Tom Theus from the Netherlands, and he would like to comment.
Yes, thank you so much for the introduction and for the opportunity to give some comments. I've been asked to focus mainly on the chapters on the rule of law, so chapters by Michiel Wiening and Dan Kellerman. I thank them for their work here in this Progressive Yearbook, to which I have the honor of giving some brief comments. So Michiel focuses on diagnosis and on the decline of the ideal of the rule of law in the EU, one that I largely agree with. But as a political theorist, I'm also focused more on thinking about solutions. And this is more prominent in Dan Kellerman's chapter. Dan has a triple ambition. He wants to diagnose what he calls the autocracy crisis. He wants to expose what's at stake for the EU and to explain what must be done. I'm largely in agreement with his assessment. 2 points that he makes are especially important in my view. First, the EU Commission and other EU actors hide behind the creation of new tools. This distracts from and delays using existing tools to respond to the crisis. The term rule of law crisis is slightly euphemistic. Of course, the rule of law is crucial, but, and this is my second point, we need to think more broadly. What we are experiencing, as Dan argues so convincingly, is the dismantling of democracy in several member states. It is, in that sense, an autocracy crisis, first and foremost. I'll limit myself to 2 additional comments that offer a slightly different perspective from what Dan and Michiel cover in their chapters. First, Dan Kellerman is persuasive in his account of why European leaders, and especially the Commission, do little to combat the autocracy crisis. His prescribed course of treatment for what he calls the metastasizing cancer of autocracy in Europe focuses mainly on the European Commission's inaction, especially in his demands that they first stop funding autocracy and second, scale up infringement proceedings against autocratizing states. But the Commission has proved to be a self-constrained and feeble actor in protecting democracy in Europe. Though this should change, it seems unlikely to change very soon. So we also need to think urgently about what others can do to support pro-democratic actors, for example, in Poland and Hungary. At worst, focusing narrowly on Commission inaction merely provides cover for others to do little or nothing in terms of concrete action. For this reason, political parties, Eurogroups, member states, and all progressive actors should urgently take their responsibility in concretely supporting pro-democratic actors in autocratizing member states, defending the free media there, and empowering progressive civil society actors in those states. There is no requirement of neutrality here. We should all be partisan in the defense of democracy. Second, it is worth thinking more carefully about what moral authority actors have outside of autocratizing member states in acting on this. Budding autocrats will frame such activities as illegitimate interference in their domestic affairs. But supranational union in the EU means that all of our civic and political freedom is tied together. When autocrats are empowered to co-legislate union affairs, the result is that we are all subject to non-democratic laws, fruit of the poison tree. EU citizens, no matter what their nationality, cannot be free if any of their EU compatriots are not free. So alongside solidarity with our European compatriots, that is the fundamental source of moral authority in acting to defend democracy in each and every member state. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Tom. It's really a very sharp analysis of two related chapters, and I think we will certainly remain focused on rule of law and the questions of democracy. I can also continue this conversation, but let me just highlight that there is now an opportunity to speak in the meeting as long as one of the authors or readers or participants of the call actually ask for the floor. So feel free to ask for the floor in the usual way, and my colleagues will ensure that you can speak. Maybe while this is organized, I ask a question from Tom if he's still with us.
Yes.
Because I introduced your intervention by highlighting that indeed the French president and the French presidency of the council indeed made a kind of promise that something is going to happen. And as you explained in the previous years, there are many, many ways, tactics, for delaying basically intervention. Do you expect some kind of serious change of the dynamic of this process in the next 6 months?
What I'm very worried about is what Dan Kellerman and others such as Laurent Besch and others have warned against, which is that the focus of a rule of law agenda will turn around thinking through the creation of new tools and mechanisms to respond, whereas we're really 10 years too late with the creation of new tools. And what is really important is that we use existing tools and we think through how, in the context of the institutional and legal infrastructure that there is, we can act in the most effective way to support democratic actors in autocratizing states.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. I'm checking if there is anyone asking for the floor. Not really. One further author, Franca Balat, is with me in the room. So Franca, if you would like to speak about the European Year of the Youth, there is also a possibility to take the roaming microphone. And while you're doing that, you can also obviously take off your mask.
Thank you very much, László, for this unexpected request. But I had the pleasure to write in the Progressive Yearbook about the European Year of Youth and what are the prospects for there. I think what we need to be careful in this year is not to fall into the PR trap that can be a European Year of Youth. And the progressive approach to engagement with young people is really need to be on the ground. We have today highlighted a personality that worked at national, European and now local level. So we need to embrace that with youth groups, with youth organizations to really bring forward the ideas of solidarity, of climate action, and also to look ahead about what kind of world of work we want to live in, what kind of relationship we want with employers, what kind of mental and physical well-being we want in our society. So these are the three main points I look at in my article. But again, I come back to what I said earlier. Let's not fall into the PR trap of nice images, looking at all the commissioners engaging sometime in a tokenistic way with young people, but really underground, listening, activating and implementing and co-constructing the ideas with young people. Thank you.
Many thanks, Francois. Indeed, in the European Union, sometimes there is this risk of conflating re-election with public relations exercise, and the European year is a sensitive product in this profession. I just have to recall that 10 years ago, I was responsible for the European Year for Active Aging and the Solidarity Between Generations. And indeed, this was extremely important for policy issues as well, since pension reforms were on the agenda. And indeed, in order to ensure that the employment rate participation in the labor market can increase in all age categories was indeed an extremely complex issue at a time of a continuing recession which was still the case in 2012. Now, there is one more author who would like to speak, and I really have the pleasure to welcome Tomáš Petříček, former foreign minister of the Czech Republic, who honored us with a chapter for the Progressive Yearbook. I think he's already connected. Tomáš, please go ahead, the floor is yours.
Thank you, László. I would like to also join the others and congratulate Roberto and other contributors to the yearbook, which is an excellent initiative. And I would like to thank you and all the FEPS staff for doing this initiative. I would like to very briefly comment on some conclusions of my contribution that focus a lot on the outcome of the Afghan crisis, and especially what we have all seen last summer as a kind of chaotic withdrawal from the country after 2 decades of our mission and presence in Afghanistan. As for Europe, the lessons learned from Afghanistan clearly show that we need to be more conscious about what are our capabilities of contributing to stability in an increasingly unstable world. We cannot adopt a strategy as a progressives that we close our eyes and leave unstable regions to themselves. These regions directly or indirectly influence our security, and hence we need to prepare, based on the lessons from Afghanistan, a new strategy how Europe, together with partners, can contribute to stability of areas and regions such as Sahel, Middle East, Horn of Africa, or now we see the tensions in the Eastern Europe as well. First of all, we need to be clear about the longevity of our presence in these regions. We need to be also better in defining the goals of our presence in these regions. And last but not least, we need to strengthen our focus on building institutions and economic and social foundations for local participation and local ownership of stabilization effort. I think these are clear lessons that we have learned in Afghanistan, and we need to be aware that we cannot win in these areas. It is up for the locals to do their work. What Europe can do is to provide assistance in creating a stable and secure framework for local development. László, thank you very much for inviting me. I hope that also the lessons from Afghanistan will help progressives to refocus again on the issues of security in a world that is changing right now. Thank you.
Many thanks, Tomáš, for being with us today and also for writing for the Progressive Yearbook. You reminded us that European action has to ensure that the world around us is safe and secure and also sustainable. And this is indeed a very important message from the Progressive Yearbook, but also many articles in the Progressive Post, which our readers should also follow online, but also in the printed versions. With this, I would like to bring our New Year reception to a close. I think indeed in a few minutes, shortly after we close, you will find the PDF of the Progressive Yearbook 2022 online on the FEPS website, where there are many other important readings also available. I thank again the authors, contributors, organizers, editors of the yearbook for the work to make this possible again. And I can only express my wish that 1 year from now, with the New Year reception of 2023 and the launch of the next yearbook, we can actually physically gather in the FEPS headquarters and celebrate the recovery from the coronavirus crisis, but also the recovery from the recession together in a progressive spirit. Thank you for your attendance and see you next time.